In front of a new client, my manager snickered. She's here to smile and nod, not to actually contribute, don't worry. I bit my tongue as he overpromised, misquoted our services, and lied about pricing. I took notes, quietly documented every false statement, and the following week, handed them to compliance. The client still signed, but only after demanding he be removed from the account. I used to work at a mid-sized consulting firm in downtown Chicago. The kind of place with glass-walled conference rooms, catered lunches once a month, and managers who smiled too wide in public but turned nasty behind closed doors. It looked polished on the outside. On the inside it was a mess of egos, politics, and people like Doug. Doug was my manager. Early 40s, loud, slick hair, fake smile, gold cufflinks that screamed, "I'm important." He wasn't dumb, but he was reckless. The kind of guy who talked over people just to remind them who was in charge. He didn't like me. I could feel it from the beginning. I wasn't loud. I didn't talk over people. I just did my job. I asked questions when something didn't make sense. And I didn't laugh at his weird little jokes that usually involved mocking someone else in the room. I think that bothered him. I didn't play the part he wanted me to play. So he sidelined me. I'd speak up in meetings, and he'd ignore me. I'd send in project notes, and he'd take credit for them or bury them. I stuck it out for a while. Honestly, I needed the paycheck. I had student loans, rent, and a younger sister who I helped support. So I smiled. I showed up. I did the work. But everything changed the day we met with a new client. This logistics firm based in Cincinnati. They had a lot of messy internal systems and were looking to revamp everything. Big money on the table. Doug started bragging about it 2 weeks before the meeting even happened. I took it seriously. I dug into their current platform, found inconsistencies, drafted a deck with real numbers and strategies. I rehearsed how we'd pitch it. I sent Doug the draft. No response. I asked if we could do a quick prep call. He said, "I've been doing this longer than you've been in the workforce. I think I got it." So I stopped pushing. Meeting day came. The CFO, their ops lead, and their head of IT flew into Chicago to meet us. We were in one of those shiny conference rooms with the floor-to-ceiling windows and a stupid fake plant in the corner. I handed out copies of the deck I made. And that's when Doug turned to them, right in front of me, and said, "Don't worry about her. She's just here to smile and nod." He laughed. Like it was a joke. Like I was invisible. The CFO gave me this awkward look. I smiled. I said nothing. I took my seat, pulled out my pen, and opened my notebook. But in my head something snapped. I didn't say anything for the entire meeting. I just took notes. And I wrote down every lie Doug told. He promised they'd be fully migrated in 6 weeks. I knew for a fact our last migration took 11. He said we had in-house specialists in their ERP system. We didn't. We usually outsourced that. He said we'd cut pricing by 30% to build the relationship. That had never been approved. He said we guaranteed ROI. Our legal team strictly forbade saying that. He even told them we'd dedicate 2 engineers full-time. We didn't have the staff. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion. And I just kept writing. At one point I tried to gently ask, "Have we cleared engineering hours for Q2? Or are we shifting from the Eastridge project?" Doug cut me off with a laugh. "We'll make it work. Don't worry." Meeting ended. Clients left. Doug slapped me on the back and said, "See how it's done? They love me." I went home and cried. Not because I was embarrassed. I'd gotten used to being brushed off. I cried because I was angry. I felt helpless. I knew what Doug was doing wasn't just rude, it was wrong. And it could blow back on all of us if the deal went through based on false promises. The next morning, I walked into the compliance office. I asked to speak to Sarah. She was one of the leads on internal ethics. I told her I had concerns about misrepresentation in a recent sales pitch. She raised an eyebrow. I handed her my notes. I had quotes, timelines, pricing discrepancies, platform lies. I also told her I had a recording. Our company policy allowed one-party consent recordings, and I'd started recording all client meetings months ago for note accuracy. After Doug kept blaming me for things I hadn't said, she asked me to email everything. I did. That afternoon, she said I'd done the right thing. But she also warned me not to say a word about it to anyone else. Doug didn't suspect a thing. For the next few days, he bragged to everyone who would listen about how he nailed it, and how clients don't care about the details, they care about confidence. Then the client signed the deal. Doug looked like he won the lottery. He even popped champagne in the office kitchen. I stayed quiet, but something strange happened. Doug didn't get assigned to manage the account. No one said why. And Doug, being who he is, started throwing fits. I kept my mouth shut. Then I got called into a meeting with our director and someone from HR. They closed the door, handed me a printed document, and said, "This is being handled confidentially, but we wanted to let you know that the client reviewed the actual terms before signing." Turns out, after compliance got my report, they reached out to the client, sent them a corrected proposal with accurate timelines and real pricing. The client reviewed both versions, ours and what Doug had presented, and was furious. They still wanted to work with us, but only on one condition. Doug had to be removed from the project. The CFO apparently said, "We want to work with people who respect our time and don't lie to our faces." Doug was pulled from the project the next day. No explanation given publicly, just told he was shifting to other priorities. He didn't handle it well. He stormed around the office, snapping at assistants, slamming doors. He started giving me the silent treatment, which honestly was an improvement. He was on leave 2 weeks later, and by April he was gone. No goodbye email. Just gone. They told people he decided to explore new opportunities. I didn't correct them. I didn't say anything. A month later I got promoted. They gave me the account, and the CFO called me directly to say, "I'm glad they put you in charge. You were the only one in that room who wasn't pretending." I didn't gloat, but I did smile. For the first time in a long time I felt seen. But this story wasn't over. Not even close. About 3 months later, I got a message on LinkedIn from a startup in Denver, a company that had tried to recruit me the year before. "Hey, we're doing some reference checks. Did you work with Doug W?" I stared at the message for a long time. Then I replied, "Yes. I have documentation related to an ethics violation and a formal compliance investigation involving him. Would you like me to send it?" They said yes. I sent the report. 2 weeks later, Doug's name disappeared from their website. He didn't even last a month. And now I'm just waiting. Because people like Doug always pop up somewhere. They think they can move on, pretend it never happened. But I still have the files. And I'm not afraid to use them. I thought that would be the end of it. Doug was gone, I had the promotion, and the account was doing well. The Cincinnati client even extended their contract after the first rollout phase. I was finally leading projects on my own, and people in the office started taking me seriously. I wasn't just the quiet girl in the corner anymore. But Doug wasn't done. About 5 months after he disappeared from our firm, I got a text from a former coworker, James, from the finance team. "Hey, you seen this?" Attached was a screenshot of a LinkedIn post. Doug had started his own consulting firm. The post was full of his usual over-the-top self-praise. After years of leading high-value client strategy for Fortune 500 companies, I'm proud to announce the launch of Wexford Solutions, where we believe in bold promises and even bolder delivery. Same city, Chicago. Same industry. Same client base. I laughed at first. He was ridiculous. I figured nobody would take him seriously after what happened. I was wrong. A month later, I found out he'd poached one of our junior staff. Tracy, a smart but easily impressed analyst. She left without notice and joined Wexford Solutions. Doug must have offered her more money, maybe a title bump. Then I heard from a vendor contact that Doug had approached one of our existing clients, the one I had been working with for over a year. He offered to match and exceed any deal we had in place. That client didn't leave us, but they told me he was persistent, pushy. Said he'd worked in a senior role overseeing their initial migration project, which wasn't even remotely true. I was pissed. I brought it up in a leadership call. Our director waved it off. He's desperate. It won't last. But I knew Doug. He was loud and reckless, but he was also persistent. He'd lie, cheat, and bulldoze his way into anything if he thought he could get a win. And now he had nothing to lose. That's when I decided I wasn't just going to watch him dig another hole. I was going to help push him into it. I started collecting information. Every time I heard about him contacting a client or making false claims, I took notes. When Tracy posted on LinkedIn about a major ERP implementation Wexford was leading, I checked the system license logs. Wexford wasn't listed as a contractor on that platform. I had friends in IT circles who confirmed it. He was claiming credit for work he wasn't doing. Then came the real problem. One morning, my Cincinnati client CFO called me directly. "Did you know your old manager reached out to one of our board members?" she asked. I froze. "Doug?" "Yep." Told them he led our project, that he was fired for political reasons, and that he could offer his services now without bureaucratic restrictions. He even sent over a pitch deck. Most of it looked like your original deck, just copied. I felt my stomach drop. "He used my deck?" She confirmed it. Word for word, same layout, same structure. Just with his new company logo slapped on top. I asked her to send it over. She did. It was a carbon copy. Even the client-specific notes I had added, custom recommendations based on our internal sessions, were there. He must have downloaded my files before he left the company. That was it. I went to legal. I brought the original decks, the copied one from Doug, the emails showing date stamps, and the NDA he signed when he joined our firm. Our legal team got real quiet. Then they got real serious. They sent a cease and desist to Doug and Wexford Solutions within 24 hours. Doug fired back with some nonsense email about misunderstandings and shared intellectual property developed during collaborative employment. It was full of legal-sounding words that meant nothing. He was bluffing. But he'd gone too far. Tracy quit his firm 3 days later. I don't know what happened between them, but she sent me a LinkedIn message. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know how bad it was. I thought he was legit." I didn't reply. That week, Wexford's website went down for maintenance. But I wasn't done. I knew a guy, Derek, who worked in regulatory compliance for a tech oversight board in Illinois. I didn't tell him everything, but I explained that Doug was marketing enterprise software services he wasn't certified to offer. Derek started digging. Turned out, Doug had listed certifications on his site that he never held. He claimed to be a certified Microsoft Gold partner. He wasn't. Claimed Oracle implementation credentials. "No, that's fraud," Derek said. "We're opening a case file. Keep your distance, but thanks for the tip." Still, Doug didn't stop. 2 weeks later, I saw a new pitch deck floating around through a client contact. It was Doug again. This time claiming he'd personally saved a Fortune 100 client from collapse by fixing a failed rollout. That client? Also mine. He wasn't just taking credit. He was rewriting history. I started thinking, maybe this wasn't just business to him. Maybe he blamed me. Maybe he knew I'd been the one who reported him. It started getting to me. I couldn't sleep. Every time my email pinged, I thought it was going to be news about another client getting contacted. Then I got a letter at home. Typed. No return address. Just a single page. "You might have won the battle, but I always finish the war." No signature. But I knew it was him. After I got the letter, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time, just staring at it. "You might have won the battle, but I always finish the war." No name. No address. No return label. But the way it was written, short, smug, and self-important, I knew exactly who it was from. Doug. At that point, he was crossing into harassment. It wasn't just lies or copying my work anymore. This felt personal. He was trying to scare me. And honestly, it worked. For a few days, I jumped every time I heard a knock on my apartment door. I checked over my shoulder walking to the train. I even started driving to work again instead of using the L, just so I could control my own route. But after a week of feeling like I was being hunted, I got angry. No, I got focused. This wasn't going to go away on its own. Doug was unraveling, but he was still dangerous. He'd lost his job, his reputation, and now his little pop-up company was crumbling. And he needed someone to blame. I was the easy target, so I did what he never thought I would. I started fighting back with more than just notes and emails. I hired a private investigator. Sounds extreme, I know. But after the letter and what I'd been hearing through industry contacts, I needed to know what else he was up to. I didn't want to wake up one day and find out he'd pulled another trick and dragged my name through the mud again. The PI, her name was Gloria, was all business. She had this calm, dry tone that made you feel like you were talking to a lawyer who didn't smile. I gave her what I had: old email records, the letter, names of clients he contacted, screenshots from LinkedIn, even the fake pitch deck. She got to work fast. In just a few days, she found out Doug had been applying for government-adjacent contracts using fake credentials. He was using old data from our firm, client names, partial documents, even our proposal format. He'd registered Wexford Solutions under a different LLC name and was bouncing between different state registrations to avoid background checks. He was trying to hide. One bid he submitted was flagged because the certifying agency noticed his resume listed Fortune 100 turnaround expert and claimed experience managing multi-million-dollar grants. Doug had never touched a grant in his life, but it got worse. Gloria discovered something else. He'd been calling former clients and claiming I'd sabotaged him. He told one exec I'd reported him because I had romantic feelings he didn't return, and another that I'd tried to blackmail him with false documents. He was trying to make me look like the crazy one, and some people believed him, at least for a minute. One smaller client, an auto parts distributor we'd worked with for a brief trial period, sent us an email saying they were reevaluating their service needs due to possible internal conflicts. I knew what that meant. Doug had gotten to them. That account wasn't big, but it pissed me off because I worked hard to earn their trust. I printed everything and brought it to our general counsel. This time I didn't come in quietly. I sat down, laid out every piece of evidence. What he'd said, what he'd done, the fake pitch decks, the harassment, the client manipulation, the fake licensing, and now the defamation. Our legal team started building a case. But I didn't stop there. I contacted a handful of former coworkers who had left the firm around the same time as Doug. Two of them admitted Doug had approached them for consulting partnerships and tried to recruit them to Wexford using fake income projections. One of them, Marcus, said he asked Doug, "Isn't that girl you used to work with running that project now?" Doug apparently replied, "She's irrelevant. I'll finish her off by Q3. That's what he said. Finish her off. I forwarded it to legal. And then I did something I never thought I'd do. I filed a personal restraining order. It felt strange, like I was admitting he'd gotten under my skin. But the investigator helped me draft it, and the evidence spoke for itself. The letter, the PI's report, the fake business filings, the way he kept showing up around my clients, it was enough. The court granted it. Doug was officially restricted from contacting me, visiting my residence or workplace, or speaking about me to clients or coworkers. He violated it within 2 weeks. I got a call from our Cincinnati client again. He sent another email, the CFO told me. Said you've been disciplined by your firm, and that we should request a new lead. I told her the truth. Everything. She didn't just believe me. She forwarded his email straight to our legal team. That was the last straw. Our firm filed a full civil lawsuit against Doug and Wexford Solutions. IP theft, defamation, breach of NDA, false advertising, and contract interference. It was a laundry list of everything he'd done since he left. Doug didn't even try to defend it himself. He hired some back alley attorney from a strip mall firm in Oak Brook who kept asking for continuances. But the damage was done. Now the pressure was building on him from every side. But I wasn't done. I had one more card to play. When I said I had one more card to play, I meant it. You see, Doug wasn't just lying. He was profiting off the lies. And I knew there had to be a money trail. Gloria, the PI I hired, had already scratched the surface, but I pushed her to go deeper. If Doug was taking payments from clients using stolen proposals and fake credentials, that meant fraud. Possibly mail fraud, wire fraud, even tax fraud. And if there's one thing people like Doug can't survive, it's money trouble. Gloria came back a week later with gold. Doug had registered Wexford Solutions in Illinois, but he'd also created a second company under his cousin's name in Indiana, Western Ridge Consulting. Same services, same fake resume. They'd been bouncing money between both accounts. She traced 3 clients, small businesses. who had paid over $40,000 in upfront consulting fees to Western Ridge for work that was never delivered. It was classic grift. I pulled every report, statement, and transfer she gave me and brought it straight to the Illinois Attorney General's office. I told them I had evidence of a former consultant committing active fraud, using false certifications and targeting small companies across state lines. They didn't blink. They opened a case. And it snowballed fast. Turns out, Doug hadn't paid taxes properly on any of those accounts for 2 years. The Indiana company didn't even have a real address. His cousin, who barely spoke English and worked at a tire shop, had no idea his name was being used. Doug had forged his signature on the registration paperwork. That added another felony. Then came the IRS. Gloria had already flagged some mismatches on 1099s Doug had submitted, and once we passed it to the state, it got passed to the feds. Now there were federal charges on the table: wire fraud, tax evasion, identity fraud, misuse of business credentials. I didn't hear much after that for about a month. Then one morning I came into work and found an internal email blast from our general counsel. To all staff, as of this morning, our firm has been cleared in the civil matter regarding Wexford Solutions. The former employee responsible for the breach has been arrested and is facing multiple charges in the state of Illinois. He was in jail. Doug had been arrested at his girlfriend's apartment in Oak Lawn. Tried to say it was all a misunderstanding. They pulled him out in handcuffs in front of her kids. That same day, I got a letter from the state AG's office thanking me for my report. They said my documentation had helped lead to the formal investigation. Wexford Solutions was shut down. Every fake website he built got pulled offline. His bank accounts were frozen. Clients were refunded from what money was left. And because he tried to blame me in writing, he ended up having to make a public retraction as part of his plea deal. It was a single paragraph, printed in the court documents and released as part of the civil settlement. The statements I made regarding my name were false, defamatory, and without merit. I take full responsibility for my actions and the harm they caused. That was it. No more smirking. No more fake confidence. Just black ink on white paper admitting he lied. He spent 11 months in jail. He lost his licenses. His LinkedIn is gone. No trace of him in the consulting world. Word got around fast. Nobody would touch him after that. The Chicago tech and consulting scene may be big, but not big enough to hide from what he did. But the best part? One of the clients he tried to poach, one that almost believed his story, came back to me a year later and offered me a speaking slot at a Midwest Tech Leadership Summit. They asked me to talk about integrity in client consulting. I stood in front of a room full of managers, analysts, and CEOs and told the entire story. No names, just the facts. I watched faces change as they connected the dots. And I made one thing very clear. Sometimes the most dangerous person in the room isn't the loudest. It's the one quietly rewriting history behind your back. They applauded. Afterward, the CFO from Cincinnati pulled me aside. "You know," she said, "the day he told us you were just there to smile and nod. We knew he was lying. But the way you handled it, you earned this." She wasn't just talking about the project. She was talking about everything. And yet, maybe I did. Because I didn't scream. I didn't throw a tantrum. I didn't play dirty. I just took notes, waited, and used his own words to bury him. Every promise he made, every lie he told, every time he tried to make me feel small, I turned it into proof. Proof that he was the fraud, not me. So now, when someone tries to cut me off in meetings or talk over me or pretend I don't belong, I smile. I write everything down. And I wait. Because I've learned something Doug never did. Quiet doesn't mean weak. It means patient. And some of us don't just fight back. We make sure the whole damn thing burns, exactly by the book.